Hello to one, hello to all. After the massive shock to the system that night out with my older brothers I told you about last episode, I knew something had to change. I was at a crossroads, and if I didn't take control, life would keep dragging me wherever it pleased. So I made a decision. I was going to London. London wasn't exactly calling my name with open arms. It was expensive, overwhelming, and let's not forget, this was back when IRA bombings were a real fear in the city. But I didn't care. I had no solid plan, no safety net, just this stubborn belief that I had to try. 3 weeks after landing in the big smoke, I got a job at McDonald's in Old Kent Road, which is still there today. But at that point, I wasn't in a position to be picky. Work was work, and at least they were hiring. So what was my grand role in this fast food empire? Picture this. My alarm goes off at 3 a.m. Yes, 3 in the morning. And by 3:30, I am at the branch scrubbing graffiti off toilet doors before the area manager's routine inspection. Nothing says career kickstart like playing janitor for £3.15 an hour. Eventually, I earned my stripes and got promoted to frying chips and flipping burgers. Not exactly the dream, but hey, it was progress. Meanwhile, I was glued to the job center, checking every day after my shift or first thing on my day off, hoping, praying for a suitable something to pop up. But week after week, nothing. After 3 months of waking up before dawn, flipping burgers, and checking the job center every single day with no luck, I was starting to lose hope. Then one morning, I saw it. A small, unassuming advert tucked away in the corner. It wasn't for a job, but for something else entirely. A training program from a startup training company. Scams weren't really a thing back then, or at least I'd never heard of them. There was no promise of a job at the end, just a vague opportunity to learn something called RPG programming on the AS400. I'd never heard of the language, let alone the machine. But for some reason, it jumped out at me. Maybe it was desperation, maybe instinct. But I figured, what did I have to lose? Worst case, I could always go back to McDonald's. So, after nearly 3 months of the same grueling routine, I took another risk. I signed up. The first day of the course arrived, and it was a room full of misfits. About a dozen of us, all struggling in different ways. 2 people stood out immediately. The first was a Cambridge maths graduate, quite brilliant, quiet, but crippled by self-doubt. I'd learned later just how sharp he really was, but back then he barely spoke. The second was a man in his 40s, a former accountant. He'd been laid off when the UK plunged into recession. Interest rates hit 15% and jobs vanished overnight. He'd been searching for work for months with no luck. Meeting him was a wake-up call. Right then I made a silent vow to myself. I will never let that happen to me. The course lasted 6 intense weeks. By the end, only a handful of us could call ourselves developers. Not everyone had managed to grasp the assignments well enough. The Cambridge graduates and I made it through, but the accountant, despite his determination, struggled. When the program wrapped up in June 1994, the reality hit hard. None of us had job placements lined up. I was staring down the very real possibility of returning to McDonald's if nothing changed soon. Then, a lifeline. A small company that supplied products to the printing industry took a chance on me. I was so relieved to have anything that I didn't ask too many questions. Not about the pay, not about the work, and certainly not about the unusual terms. Because here's the catch. For the first 6 weeks, I'd only earned £50 a week. Barely enough to cover my tube fare between Peckham and North Wembley. And even that wasn't guaranteed. The company was treating it as a trial period. If they decided I was worth keeping, then I'd get a real contract. Looking back, I should have wondered why any reputable business operated this way. But desperation clouds the judgment. Somehow, I survived the probation. By autumn 1994, 2 years into the UK's brutal recession, I was finally handed a contract. The salary was meagre, but as they say, beggars can't be choosers. What I didn't realize then was that the IT industry was on the verge of exploding. And at first, that explosion felt like a disaster. Because within a month of me joining, the entire IT department vanished. The manager and 3 others, all gone, lured away by soaring salaries in the city. Suddenly, I was alone. No team, no guidance. Just me, a junior developer with barely 6 weeks of training. Expected to keep everything running. The panic was paralyzing. I wasn't just worried about failing. I was terrified of being exposed as a fraud. How could I, of all people, handle what an entire team had once managed. But as it turned out, desperation has a way of teaching you what textbooks never could. Left completely alone in that IT department, I had no choice but to sink or swim. So I swam hard. Overtime became my normal. Weekends vanished into servers backups and setting up terminals for users. After a month of barely keeping my head above water, the company finally brought in an experienced hire to help run things. Just as I started breathing again, the hammer dropped. I arrived at work one morning to an emergency meeting. The announcement? We'd been acquired. A bigger company with the exact same systems only wanted our inventory and customer data. Most employees would be let go immediately with compensation, but not me. I was still the new guy, 3 months into my first real job, and suddenly I was out on the street. Can you imagine that shock? 2 years of grinding through a recession, McDonald's, the training course, surviving probation, only to have the rug yanked away. It didn't just knock my confidence, it shattered it. But that day taught me the most brutal lesson of my career. No one will look out for you but yourself. Not your company, not your manager. When the chips are down, you are just a line on a spreadsheet. So there I was, back to square one, panic rising, with no idea how to explain this disaster to future employers. But what I couldn't see then was this. Sometimes the universe fires you for you. Because my next move, that's where the real story begins.